Welcome to this Exhibitor presentation at SightCity 2025. Here you can see the recording, The Monarch, a New Era in Braille and Tactile Graphics with Andrew Flatres, Blindness Products Manager of HumanWare from Wednesday, May 21st at 1 p.m.
Okay, let's get started. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on the Monarch, a new era in Braille and tactile graphics. My name's Andrew Flatres. I am the Braille product manager at HumanWare. I've been with HumanWare for over 22 years, watching various different departments, and very much passionate about Braille. I'm an advocate of Braille in many different groups, and welcome to this webinar. We're going to talk about the why. Why did HumanWare create Monarch? That's a really important question that we ask ourselves when we're creating products is, why are we trying to do this? Then we'll talk about the what exactly is Monarch, how it's being done. I'm going to touch base on the eBraille, which some of you may have heard about. This is a new file format that's being created. And then I'll finish off with a demo. And then after the demonstration, we can open up the floor for any questions that you may have. So let's talk about the why first of all. And this may occur to you, or some of these may occur to some of you and your students. But let's take us back into those classroom moments where students receive materials far later than their sighted classmates. This definitely happens quite a lot of times where students just don't have the materials in time, and therefore they have to learn something else or sit at the back of the classroom. This is quite a common issue that still happens today. We then have a look at the increase in expenses of long production times to produce textbooks and the curriculum. So production of Braille books, tactile graphics is expensive. It's also time consuming. It takes a long time to create this, which of course affects the materials arriving later for that student. Limited access to tactile graphics. We believe tactile graphics is equally important as Braille literacy. Tactile graphic is becoming, tactile graphic is very powerful. You may have heard of the message, a thousand pictures speaks 1,000 words, or one picture speaks 1,000 words, shall I say. But that doesn't portray very well for someone who's visually impaired or blind. And as we start moving towards textbooks, magazines, newspapers, it's very much focused around images. And those images are not in a tactile shape or form. And there's a lot of information that those students are missing because the tactile graphic isn't displayed correctly, or it's an image that's not converted to a tactile graphic. So we'll talk about that, and I'll showcase some of how we can access more tactile graphics. There's the lack of spatial understanding or formatting in documents. Traditionally, 50 years this year, we've been celebrating single line displays, single refreshable Braille lines. And with the single line displays, it doesn't give you a good understanding spatially. That's why many blind students would potentially go for Braille paper, because it gives you the spatial understanding of what a paragraph is, what center is, table forms. And there's a lot of that is missing when you're displaying that in a single line display. We then talk about the complex workflows in STEAM subjects, your science, maths, where it becomes very complex to portray information to that student. And then lastly is the poor impromptu learning options, which again is a popular one that does happen very regularly, where the teacher decides to change a particular subject. So whether you're supporting a student, you may have prepared all of the material in advance, which is fantastic, but unfortunately, the teacher then decides to change the lesson, and you don't have anything to prepare in that instant. So the student is not able to participate in that lesson fully. Let's talk about the what. So Monarch, it is a connected tablet, and it's a tactile display with equidistant pins. It's very different to your traditional single line display technology. It can display 32 Braille characters wide by 10 lines. The 10 lines of Braille all in this one display. It also has a touch sensor for gestures and touch manipulations. So when we're creating documents or you're reading documents, you'll be able to use the touch sensor to move your cursor. traditional single line displays have touch cursor routed buttons. Obviously, with the Monarch, we don't have any physical buttons on the display. So the way that would mimic the gestures or the touch routing cursors, you would use the touch sensors. It's audio and video output compatible, so it does have onboard text-to-speech, and it supports many different languages. It has a USB-A, USB-C port, has an all-day battery, and that's something that we've been very impressed about with the battery. It actually lasts at least 2 days. Has a Braille keyboard for your input skills, and of course you can plug in a QWERTY keyboard. And the dimensions is the size of a 15-inch gaming laptop, weighing about 4.5 pounds. I'm just showing a slide that has the image of the Monarch, and I'm just going to go through some buttons briefly. So on the top surface to the left, we have a pan up button, and directly below that is a D-pad, a directional pad that has up, down, left, and right. Now, the D-pad is going to be traditionally used when you're panning a tactile graphic. It's also can be used when you're navigating around a document. So if you want to move your cursor in a different place and you don't want to use touch technology, you can use your up, down, left, right keys. On the right side of that top part of the display, you do have another D-pad, which is mimicking exactly the same as the left. So you do have a choice. You have to use your left or the right. And then on the right side, just directly below that D-pad is a pan down button. So your pan down and your pan up buttons are used for panning a display up to 10 lines of Braille. And that can be also changed. Now, you directly underneath the tactile display on the corner of the left, we have a minus button. And on the bottom right, we have a plus button. These two buttons are used to zoom in or make a tactile graphic bigger. So when we interact with a tactile graphic, we're going to be using these two keys to zoom in or zoom out. But these also have a second, they could also perform a second task. And if you have Braille displayed, so whether you're reading a document or whether you're in a menu, you can increase the spacing. So you can mimic double line spacing. And the typical use case is you may have various different students that like to have Braille quite close, or you may have a younger learner that doesn't like to have too much Braille. They find it hard reading off the paper because it's too close. We can mimic double line spacing instantly. So we can increase the line spacing by pressing the plus key, and you'll notice it will go from 10 to 8 lines to 7 and finally to 6 lines. We then have our traditional Perkins keyboard with 8 dots, compatible with various different Braille tables, over 250 in fact. And in between the Braille keys 1 and 4, we have a refresh button. This also has 2 tasks. So if you find that there's some random dots that are up that should be down or vice versa, we can press this button about 2 or 3 seconds and it will give a quick clean of the display. It's also used in conjunction with the touch. So with the touch, how we would do this is we would point to a position and we would use this button, either press it once or press it twice, similar to like a mouse button. On the left edge of the Monarch, we have closest to us is the USB-A port. We then have a power button and we then have USB-C. USB-C will be used predominantly if you're connecting it with a screen reader. And during SightCity, we are showcasing our partnership with Vespero, where we are showcasing native multi-line support with JAWS. We have the touch sensor at the very top edge. So this is what's grabbing all of your finger positions. So when you touch the display, it can recognize where your fingers are. And of course, we have the tactile display, which has 480 cells. On the front edge, from the left, we have a triangle-shaped button, which is called a bat button. This will exit you out at one level at a time. Then in the middle, we have a home button, which will always take you to the home menu. And then the square-shaped button, which is a recent apps button, which will be used to switch between various apps that you've got open. And then on the right side, we have our audio jacks, up and down, volume keys, and a HDMI port. that you can connect to a monitor so that the sighted peers can see what you're doing. Let's talk about the how then, and how this was created. And it does involve partners. And HumanWare is an equal business and developer with APH. So the American Printing House are equal investors of the Monarch. We have the technology that's being utilized by DOT Incorporation. And we have partnerships such as the National Federation for the Blind to ensure that we keep the blind user at the center. And that's really important, that we are creating a product for a blind. And it's so important that we make sure that we listen to all the feedback out there and that we make necessary changes to accommodate everyone's needs. And then there's the eBraille part, where there's over 40 organizations and businesses helping with this new eBraille standard. And to assist on the eBraille standard, the DAISY Consortium will bring that eBraille to life. So DAISY Consortium is creating this new standard in the help of all these other organizations to make this. So just to quickly touch base on the eBraille, and this is really important part because BRF has to evolve. You know, BRF has been around for many years and just hasn't evolved. There's so many problems with the BRF in terms of navigating. So you're unable to navigate around a Braille file. Think of this like a notepad or just a text file where you're very limited on navigating by paragraphs or even sentences. What this new revolution file type will do will combine 3 different pillars. It will combine the Braille literacy of your spatial formatting. So it will keep the integrity of your spatial formatting. It will also integrate tactile graphics. So no longer do you need to go and find those tactile graphics on a separate book. Those tactile graphics can be sent as a link. You'll be able to open that up on devices like the Monarch. And then the last piece is, of course, navigating. How you can navigate around a Braille file. So very much like an EPUB. So the eBraille, to summarize, is really bringing a Braille-ready format file into an EPUB. I've just listed some of the benefits here, and we'll touch base, I'm sure, on the demonstrations in a moment. But some of the things that we could do with the Monarch today is adjust line spacing. There is a single line mode available. We have the text-to-speech on board. We have Braille learning tables. We have a visual Braille output. That'd be really helpful for those that are more sighted and they want to see the Braille displayed and help with the Braille learning. Has a visual finger location, so you can see where the students' fingers are and where they're reading. We have onboard Braille translation, both Duxbury and the Bluey tables. Has a robust contextual menu. And most importantly, Braille and tactile literacy in one. And that's really important when we look at tactile graphics. You know, having tactile graphics is great, but you do need to have Braille labels. Otherwise, there's no real understanding or context behind that. 32 characters by 10 lines. We can expose more tactile graphics with online libraries. We support MathML. And there's more applications being built, including an impromptu drawing application called Wingit. And that will allow you to draw on an iPad, and you'll be able to instantly get that drawing displayed on your Monarch. Fortunately, I'm unable to show that today with the screen. But if you are at SightCity, please do come and visit us. Okay, so let's see this in action. I'm just going to stop my screen for one moment, and then I'll share it again. Okay, let's share my screen.
Internet browser, Ecosia.
Okay, so we should have the visual screen of the menu that's being shown from Monarch. So I've connected this to my laptop, and I'm able to share my screen. I've also got the audio that's coming through, so hopefully you'll be able to hear where the focus is as well. And I'll explain a lot of this as well as we go through the demonstration. So a few pieces here in the menu, and what I'm going to do straight away is I'm going to turn on my Braille outputs. Now the Braille output is fantastic because those that are visual peers amongst you that are looking at the screen are able to see what I'm seeing in Braille. So I'm showing the whole Braille and tactile array on the screen with Braille dots. Not only that, you'll be able to see where my fingers are. So as I start to press around the screen, you'll be able to see where my fingers are reading. So think of those situations with remote learning. So you're able to see exactly where I'm reading using the point location. This is where the touch gesture is coming into play. You'll also notice on the very far left side, this little symbol that has 9 dots. So there's a little symbol next to our menus that has 9 dots. This is called the focus indicator. And this is really important to know, because when you're used to a single line display, if you're using VoiceOver, if you're using JAWS, whatever is focused on the screen is of course focused on your display. So you could action something, you could press enter and it will enter on that particular item. But when we're with multi-line, that's not the case. So we had to think of a way of how can we show a user, this is where the accessibility focus is. And that's why we've introduced this focus indicator, which allows you to take control of where that focus is. So navigating through the menus as an example. There's multiple ways to navigate through the menus. We can use our directional D-pad keys. So you've got one on the left and one on the right, and you can use up
Word
and down.
processor, keyword.
So as I go down,
Math, key math.
on the display, this focus indicator will also move.
File manager, files.
I can also use my space bar to go forwards,
Victor reader.
or I can also use my .7, which is my backspace,
File
to go
manager,
back.
files. Math, key math.
You can use space .1 also to go
File
backwards,
manager, files.
and space .4 to
Victor
go
reader.
forward.
Braille terminal, Victor reader.
So these are the most common ways to get started navigating around menus and lists. So whenever you are in a menu, whenever you are in a list, so a file manager, for example, you'll notice that focus indicator be visible. You may also come across this focus indicator more than once, and that just tells you that the focus extends more than one line. So imagine a big paragraph of a book. You may find that this focus indicator, you'll find it's about 4 lines or 5 lines, because that's where the focus is immediately. Other ways to navigate is first letter. So as you become familiar with the Monarch, you can start typing the initial letter. So if I want to go to my emails, I could press the letter E.
Email, key mail.
I then could also use touch gesture, and that's where the power of the touch sensors come into play, certainly when we talk about multi-line reading. So as I'm reading this display, I particularly want to go to the file manager. So as I press with one finger only, I can press on the button between my 1 and 4 keys. It's a round button between my dots 1 and 4, my Perkins. As I press
File
that
manager,
button,
files.
the focus indicator will jump to that place, which is great. But I can also press the refresh button twice. So if I want to go into my word processor, so I find the word processor. And once I'm in the word processor, I can then double click.
Word.
And what double click will do will take you into that menu.
Keyword.
So it's
Create.
very much like your voiceover gestures where you're double clicking to enter item. So there's a few ways to navigate through Monarch. I'm just going to go back to the main menu by pressing my home key.
Main menu. Braille editor, key BRF.
So just talking about some of these applications. So we do have a Braille editor, key BRF. This is identical to a Perkins Brailler. Whatever you type, it will display. This is a great tool to mimic the Perkins Brailler. So if you're into spatial maths, if you want to show spatial maths, this is a great tool because you can mimic exactly what a Perkins can do, but in a dynamic way. So as I open up this Braille editor, I do have an example here with some spatial maths. It's all going to be shown how you've typed it. So if you have your own code, it will of course spit out your own code. If it's a document that's in grade 1 or grade 2, of course, it's going to display that. There's no translation happening here. But I am displaying an example of spatial maths when we look at the kind of column method, where in the approach here is very difficult to do when you talk about a single line display. But there's other things that you can use Braille Editor for, such as just reading. So as I just open up another document here as an example,
Open.
I have another example of Alice in
Demo
Wonderland.
files. Loading. Top.
And so those that are able to see my screen, I'm showing what I can see on my Braille display. And what you'll notice is the formatting. So here I can straight away find that my title is spaced in the center. I know where the paragraphs are because they're indented. Now think about applications such as coding apps, where indentation is very important. And as I mentioned about the plus keys and the minus key to increase the line spacing, we can also do this. So as I hit my plus key,
8 lines.
You'll notice now, those that are seeing the screen, the gap between the lines are increasing. So now I have 8 lines.
7 lines.
I now have 7 lines.
6 lines.
And then 6 lines is the least that you can go. So go back to 10 lines, you can hit the minus
7
key.
lines. 8 lines. 10 lines.
So you're in full control of your whole user experience there. So that's the Braille editor. Just come out of the Braille editor.
Keep DRF. Main menu. Braille editor. Keep DRF.
And let's go on to the next item, which is Tactile Viewer. Okay, Tactile Viewer is the application that will open up all of your tactile graphics. And the following file formats are supported. PDF, and PDF is predominantly used for tactile graphics. So that will display your tactile graphics and Braille labels. We do support JPEG, bitmap, PNGs, and I think that's pretty much it at the moment. But when we talk about JPEGs and bitmaps and PNGs, they'll show you the outline of an image, but of course, any Braille labels that will be on that tactile graphic will just increase because it's an image. So if you want to have a tactile graphic with Braille labels, it does need to be in the PDF format, which of course is one of the files that are supported for tactile graphics for the new eBraille. So let's go ahead and open up Tactile Viewer.
A PHTGIL menu. Tactile Viewer. A PHTGIL.
So when we open up Tactile View menu, we do have a few options here. We have Open, we have APHTGIL, and we have Settings. If it's a file that's already existing on your device, maybe it's on a USB stick, then we can go to Open, and that will open up your file management system. But if, however, you want to explore additional tactile graphics, so as I mentioned, one of the barriers is the lack of tactile graphics that are being exposed, and the cost and the time it takes to produce. Now, with the Onboard library access, APHTGIL, it has over 2,000 graphics that you can access instantly at your own leisure, really exposing more tactile graphics. And we'd love to expand this to more libraries globally. We'll come on to that just in a moment. But for now, I'm just going to choose Open.
Open.
So again, you'll notice those that are seeing my screen, I've got Open in Contracted Braille, because I'm set to use Contracted Braille. And just to the left of that, I do have my focus indicator telling me that's where the focus is. Now I can select that by pressing the Enter key, which will be .8 in this case, and that will open up my file management system.
Download. 2020_AFC_Oakley_crest.jpg.
Okay, now I'm just going to quickly open up a really simple tactile graphic just to showcase how you navigate around quickly, and then we'll go on to a bit more of a complex image. So let me just go and open up a demonstration file.
Storage. Alarms. Sim. Demo files. Demo files. Bug. Dog.easyshapes.pdf.
Okay, so this is an easyshapes.pdf file that I created. And I created this in Word. But of course, you can use your tactile graphic creation suite, whichever you use. So when we first open up a tactile graphic, now this tactile graphic was created with 11 by 11.5 sheet of paper. Okay, so any tactile graphic that we open up on the Monarch, it will put it into this overview mode. think of it like a print preview. So in Word, you have a print preview. There's not a lot of information that you can get from it, but it gives you an idea that there are things to explore. So as I feel on the display, yes, you could probably work out there are some shapes here, but as we get to more complex images, this will just be a lot of random dots. But the real value here is to get an understanding of that page, that there's something on the top right here that I need to go investigate. There's something on the bottom right. There's something in the middle of this. And there's a single dot at the top. So now it's time for you to explore this graphic in a bit more detail. There's a couple of ways of doing that. We can use the plus key. So as we use the plus key, that will take you in to the standard view. So now what it's done, it's taken me into this tactile graphic in the same scale that it would have been if it was embossed or printed. So 11 by 11.5. And what you'll notice is, as I fill this shape, which is a star, I also have the Braille labels directly underneath with my labels. Now, when you hit the plus key, that will just take you straight away into the center of that image. I'm going to go ahead and press the minus button to come back out to my overview mode. The other method of navigating, which is by far the preferred method from a lot of our focus groups and studies, is using that point and double click. So with the one finger only, we point to position. So I'm going to point to my top left of my display. And now I'm going to double click on my round button between my dots 1 and 4 by Perkins keys. And that will then directly take me in to that particular spot or place of the page. Once you are in this mode, once you've enlarged it and you've got Braille and you're into the image, there's only the two views that you have when it comes to PDF. So there's the overview, and then there's the standard view. Now, in standard view, that's where you're going to have the Braille labels, if any Braille labels are visible, but you can then start to pan around using your directional keys. So I'm going to use one of my keys, directional D-pads, just to move right. And now I'm into play on the right side of my image here. I've got a circle that's being displayed. If I use my left, or sorry, my down, I'm now bringing this paper form kind of up on the display as I start to expose more tactile graphics here as well. So now I've got my star that's just coming out of play, and I now come into play with a down arrow. Think of this a bit like iPhone users or just tablet users. For those that are sighted, when you're pinching, you're increasing that image. And then when you're increasing that image, to move around that, you're using one finger to pan around. So think of it like that, if that's a good understanding, if you are a sighted user. This is exactly what we're doing with tactile graphics. We're making it bigger, or we're enlarging it to the same scale that it was created, and then we can pan around using our directional keys. Now, once we're still in this standard view, there are quick ways to jump around in positions. And the way that I like to describe this is, think of this page as a full cell of 6 dots. Okay, so think of 6 dots, and think of those 6 dots filling up that whole page. So if I want to get to my top left of my page, I could press space with dot 1, because dot 1's at the very top left corner. If I want to get to my bottom right corner of the page, which would be dot 6, I can press space with dot 6, and that will take me to the bottom right corner. Likewise, if I want to go to my middle left page, I can press space with 2, and middle right would be space, of course, with dot 5. Now, if I want to get into the center of the page, okay, so maybe I want to get into the real center, I can press space 2 and space 5 together, which is where my star is. If I want to go to my top center of the page, we know how to get to the top left, which is space dot 1. We know how to go to the top right, which is space with dot 4. So pressing those two keys together will take me to the top center of my page. So this is how you could quickly navigate around this tactile graphic. And it doesn't matter what size it is, whether it is a 4-letter size, whether it's 11 by 11.5, or whether it's an infinity larger scale tactile graphic, because that's going to be the benefits of having dynamic graphics. There's no limit in the size of paper. So think of like the periodic table, where you're perhaps creating it on an embossed version or a Zycam or Zyfuse where you're taping all the pages together. No longer do you need to do that. We can just create a big scale graphic, have it as a PDF, and you'll be able to open this up on the Monarch and navigate it without turning over pages. We, of course, can show multiple pages as well. So some PDF graphics do have multiple pages, which we'll come to in a moment. The other piece I'd like to point out here is on the bottom of my display, I have a row of dots. Also, on my right side of my display, very far right side, we do also have a row of dots. These are what we call our scroll bars. Now, someone who is blind may have heard what scroll bars are, but they may have not interacted with them before, or they may not understand the main use case for scroll bars. But this really gives you now an understanding spatially of where you are on that display or on that bit of paper. So if I go back to my top left, okay, using my space.1, this will explain it a little bit better for you. So if I look at my horizontal position, I'm as far left as I'd possibly go. So this tells me that I am on my left side of my page. And as I start to feel that, it's now on the right side, there is some space for me to continue moving right if I wanted to. So as I pan right, what will happen is that scroll bar on my horizontal position will start to move. And I notice now that as I'm moving more rightly, that scroll bar is giving me some space on my bottom left because I'm no longer on the left side of my display. Let me go back to the very far left. Now on my vertical bar, this is really all the way to the top. So this again tells me that I'm at the top of my page. And as I start to fill down this column, I do have a lot of room to go down. So as I pan down now, that scroll bar will also move. So it's a real good indicator telling me where I am. And it's a really important skill set, understanding spatially where you are in that page. Now, those scroll bars can be removed if you need to in that setting options, but it does serve there for a lot of value. And it's definitely a benefit to keep on. Now, whilst in tactile graphic, you can also bookmark locations as well. So currently I'm on a square. If I want to bookmark this particular position, there is a shortcut for that. Now, don't worry if you've forgotten shortcuts. We're not here to teach you all these shortcuts. But what is a great training method and to show the simplicity of Monarch is the contextual menu, the onboard contextual menu that showcases what you can do at that given time. So to open up the context menu, you can press and hold square button at the very front edge of your Monarch, or you can press space with the letter M to bring up your context menu.
Zoom in plus.
Now this tells me all of the possible things that I can do within the Monarch. Now as I navigate down,
zoom out. Add bookmark, backspace with M.
It tells me the shortcut. Okay, not only does it tell me in audio, but also in Braille, it gives me that. So this is a really good training aid. Now, I want to add a bookmark. This is exactly what I want to do. And the shortcut for that is backspace with M. So now I know the shortcut is backspace with M. It's great. I can use that shortcut in future. But I want to action it from here. So I can press the Enter key, .8, to do exactly that.
Enter bookmark name edit box. Enter bookmark name.
It will then prompt me to name this particular position. So here I'm just going to call this SQUARE, square, and then press Enter.
Square. Tactile viewer. Bookmark created.
So that's now created kind of a Latin longitude or maybe a snapshot of where this exactly tactile graphic is appearing. So if I go to my bottom right side of the display now, where I've got the arrows, if I want to quickly jump to certain areas or certain bookmarks, I can then use the jump to bookmark shortcut. And again, if you don't know what that shortcut is, we can press our space M.
Context menu.
And we can go down the list.
Bookmark, jump to bookmark, backspace with J.
Backspace with J for future reference. And I hit Enter key to jump to bookmark.
Enter bookmark name edit box. Enter bookmark name.
It's then going to prompt me the bookmark name that I want to jump to. So yes, you do have to remember the bookmark name. There is some future development that is underway where we're going to have a list of bookmarks, But for now, you do have to kind of keep track of those yourself. So as I type in square again.
SQUARE, square. Tactile viewer.
Again, that will take me straight to that square option. Now, again, I'm just using this simple tactile graphic just to really show how we can navigate on a tactile graphic. But let's open up a bit more complex or more realistic kind of tactile graphic that you'll use. So I'm going to hit the Exit key.
Tactile viewer. Open.
I'm going to choose Open.
Demo files. Bar graphics simply golfballs.pdf.
And I'm going to open up this bar graph example. Again, it's a PDF file.
Tactile viewer.
So again, when we open up a tactile graphic, it just takes you into that preview mode. So as I'm exploring this page now, I'm able to see there's some random dots that don't make sense at the very top. And I can see that there are some kind of loads of different or bars, you could say. So yeah, again, you could work it out that this is a bar graph, but it's not going to give you any information other than what you think it could be. Okay, you're just kind of guessing at this point. And that's why it's really important that you have the context, that you have Braille labels, to have an understanding of what a tactile graphic. There's no good just showing pictures of emojis or just general graphics with no context, because you won't understand what that graphic is. So again, we have a couple of ways to explore this. So we could use the plus key, the zoom in key, to zoom into that image, or I can use my point and click. So if I want to go to the bottom left corner of this just to explore what this is, point, double click on my refresh button. That now takes me into that particular place. And now I can start to read on my display. So here I can start to feel that I've got some Braille numbers here. I've got a number sign 2. And here underneath this particular, what looks like a bar, is the color red. And as I move across, again, I've got another bar. And underneath that, we do have the color blue. And as I pan to my right using my D-pad keys, more information is coming into play. So here I have yellow. Okay, and there's also information down here that says color. Okay, so this is kind of my legend. So my y-axis is kind of saying color. And I've got some numbers on my left side here. So I'm going to go up just to explore more. So I feel around this tactile graphic. I see that there are some bars that have stopped, or some that are lower than the others. So as I come into play, if I wanted to kind of find out what the value of blue was, okay, so I think blue is the second column here. I feel blue. I'm now just going to find where blue stops. Okay, so blue is now stopped, and I'm going to try and find the value of that. As I find the value of that, we're looking at 6. So value of 6 is, is the blue color. So again, this is a more realistic tactile graphic. There are many tactile graphics that we can access. So as I exit out of here, there may be some graphics that we want to explore that we haven't seen before. And this is where the APH-TGIL is a fantastic place to go and find some new tactile graphics that you haven't seen. So again, I'm going to hit the enter on APH-TGIL. You will need internet access here.
APH-TGIL menu. Search.
Now, there's a couple of ways to get these tactile graphics. You can search for keyword, or there's different categories. So I don't know if you've ever used the APH's library before. It is free, so you can go on a computer and register for free, and you can have access to those graphics, which is great, a great resource place to go. You can go to these different categories and then select one, or you can just search by keyword. But let's go and have a look under maybe landmark buildings.
Music. Monuments, landmarks, buildings.
Let's take a look under the category
Loading
of landmarks.
Assets from TGIL.
Again, this depends on your internet connectivity at this point, and I'm just using the hotel's connection here, so I do apologize if it is a little bit slow or blurry coming on the screen.
Monuments, landmarks, buildings. Arc de Triomphe.
Okay, so here we have loads of options here as I'm reading on this display here. Arc de Triomphe, I've got the Atacama Giant, I've got Bag End, I've got Big Ben, Elizabeth Tower. I'm going to choose the first one, which is the Arc de Triomphe. I'm going to point, double click to open up that.
Loading content. Please wait. Tactile viewer.
Okay. So again, the first time that you open up any kind of image, it puts it into that preview window. And now it's time for me to explore. So I can use my plus key or I can use my point and click. And so now I'm going to explore this image and it opens up in the same scale how it would have been embossed. So this, I'd imagine it's going to be a pretty big sheet of paper that it will scale to, maybe 11 by 11.5 as well. And I can feel kind of all things that are on the kind of the top end. I start to pan down towards the bottom. So I'm really just getting a general feel of this graphic here. See, we got the arc here that's coming into play. Don't think there's any Braille labels in here. I mean, from the APH's library, it just gives you the exposure of the graphics. There are some that do include Braille labels, but of course it's in the grade of Braille that was created because it's not going to translate the print into Braille at this point. So if you are creating any graphics, of course, you'd be using something like maybe Tactile View, you may be using Word, you may be using CorelDRAW. If you start adding your own Braille labels in there in your own language, they of course would come across no problem at all.
Monuments, landmarks, buildings. Arc de Triomphe. Main menu.
Okay,
Braille
so that's
editor,
the Braille editor and Tactile View. I'm not going to go into all of the applications, but I will just briefly cover some.
Email.
So we do have an onboard email client here. So this will connect to your Office 365 accounts, your Google accounts. And it's a great way to send and receive emails and attachments. Maybe it's a tactile graphic that you want to receive. Perhaps it's an eBraille or BRF book that you want to receive, or an eBraille or an EPUB, or even a Word document. So Monarch is compatible with various different file formats. We then have an internet browser. So we can now surf the web in a multi-line way. Fantastic if you want to just search for just maybe some other graphics that you perhaps want to create. Maybe use ChatGPT to create a graphic of something and then open that up in Tactile View. These are all the things that you can now do.
Word processor, keyword.
Now the word processor is a print environment. So as we go into the word processor,
Keyword.
Again, we have various different options here on my display. We have create, we have open, we have print, we have emboss, and then we have settings. I'm going to create something here. So this is where the translation tables that you're using will translate. As I press enter, I'm now in a blank document. So think of this as you're using a Microsoft Word document here and you're ready to type. So I'm now going to type in
O. Hello, my name S is dots 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 W Andrew.
Okay, so again, I prefer to use contracted Braille, so it automatically translates depending on your table. And this actually comes into print. So those that are visual, you'll be able to see on the transparent. I'll just turn my visual display off as well.
Braille output off.
It's converted that into print. And so I can then print this out and I can then send it to a teacher, or I can even send it by email as an attachment, and it will all be print. So it's really inclusive in terms of converting Braille into print, and also it does it the other way around. Braille, print into Braille. So if I have a Word document that was prepared by a teacher, I can open that up and I'll be able to read that in my preferred Braille code. Now, let me just turn my
Visual Braille output on.
Visual Braille output. I'm just going to hit enter to create a new line. And I'm going to put today is a sunny day.
256 day.
Okay, now I'm using 10 lines of Braille. So I can display up to 10 lines at this moment in time, but I want to point out something here where you may want to adjust to 8 lines, which is the default kind of settings out of the box. So as I read in my display, hello, my name is Andrew. If I want to make some changes here, this is where we need to manipulate the cursor. We don't have any push buttons above each cell. So we can either use our
End of
D-pad
field.
keys, so our
Space.
directional D-pad keys, which
Space.
will start to move
F,
my cursor.
Y, F, space.
So I can go up, down, left, and right. And my cursor will change depending on the positioning. So if I'm under a character or under a Braille label, Braille character, it will give me 3 dots. So I can now have a cursor that displays 3 dots. If you are on a space, it's 2 dots. Now, when we did a lot of our kind of focus groups, when we talked about dynamic multi-line displays, it was very difficult to find your cursor if there's a lot of Braille on the screen. So imagine finding a Braille bit of paper. Trying to find your cursor was very difficult. Now, some people do also prefer to be in a 10 lines, and they could find your cursor. So if it was a 3 dots, there was many people that could find it, not a problem at all. But still, you'll come into a problem here where under the O, you've got my cursor, and then it bleeds into the second line, which is the S, which can also be difficult. And that's why on demand, you can hit the plus key, and then you get that extra space. So if we talk about computer Braille, those that are using computer Braille, you'll predominantly will be working with 8 dots, 8 lines as opposed to 10 lines, because of course you want that gap in between each line. But if you're used to 6-dot Braille, then for reading, you can revert to 10 lines, but when you're editing, you may want to adjust into 8 lines, certainly if you want to start looking at or manipulating your cursor. The other thing that we looked at, and this is based on feedback, is, okay, well, what if I'm trying to find a word and then I need to find my cursor again? It's not very efficient because I'm still going to be searching through the whole page. So what we've introduced is to move your focus, or to move the line to the top. So as an example, I'm going to use my find shortcut, which is space with the letter F.
Edit box.
And
Find what?
I'm going to type sunny. So I want to find the word sunny.
Y.
I'm going to hit the enter key.
Edit box.
Now again, as I read my top line, it's not come into play, but I'm trying to find my cursor of where it is. Now, this sunny could be at the bottom of 10 lines or even the middle of 6 and 5. But just to show you what we've introduced, we can force this line now to the top by hitting enter, so my dot 8 and F. And that will then move my focus to the top line. And so now I'm only needing to search my top line for where that word is. So again, when we're looking at multi-line, dynamic multi-line, we have to think about these different ways and methods of how a user can interact with. So there was a lot of thought that's gone into this. There are things that I'm sure that we've missed, but we have a very long, aggressive roadmap for Monarch indeed, and would very much welcome a lot of people's feedback. So as we go into places in Europe like Germany and Netherlands, we'll be working with schools like the Blisters Campus School. We'll be working with them to ensure that we can hit everyone's needs as possible. So this is how you would manipulate that cursor, as I mentioned, using your up, down, left, right keys, or you can also use your point and click. So as I'm using my point and click, I find the letter T. I can point my finger there, press on the refresh button between my 1 and 4, and that will take my cursor into play, and I can make some changes if I need to. So Monarch is not just a display, it's there for interaction. You can create all of your work on this device, certainly when it comes to the education side of things. Word processor also supports MathML. So if you've got documents that contain maths and you've created it with an equation editor, maybe you're using your math editor in Word or you're using MathType, all of that would be converted into your preferred code on the Monarch. So you can also create math equations.
New line.
So again, if I want to create some equations here, I can do so by opening up my equation editor. Now, if you don't know what the equation editor is, you can open up your context menu again. I happen to know what it is, which is my backspace.
Key math expression, UEB edit box.
That's right. Enter with M, I beg your pardon. See, I forgot it myself.
Key math.
We go back.
Edit box. End of
so
document.
enter with M.
Math mode on.
So now that gives me my math mode on. That gives me a little indicator here telling me my math start. And now I can start
Dots
typing
3,
in
B.
my maths. So let's do
B deleted.
half.
A dots B dots 2 3 5
That's a
A
half
dots 3 B dots 2
equals
dots 3 A
1. Now, if I press enter, I can then use multi-line maths. So if I do want another equation, I can hit enter and it will go into my second line, and I'm still in math mode. I do need to tell Monarch to turn math mode off. And to do that, again, it's a toggle. Enter with M is a toggle to start maths and to end maths.
Math
So
then
again,
math
press
mode
enter
off.
M.
Processing math.
That then
Processing math.
processes the maths. And what that
1/2
does,
plus
it's now
1/2 equals 1. Edit
it's now
box.
going to
End of document.
translate that. So it's going to translate that into print. Now, visually, at the moment, when we're in the live view, I'll turn my
Visual
Braille
Braille
off. We
output
got
off.
today is a sunny day, and then we can see just Braille dots. But if we do a print, so if I was to print this, or if I was to send this to the teacher, I can do a quick visual preview of my document, and that will
Keyword.
display in print.
Preview.
So now I can
Print.
see, hello, my name is Andrew. Today is a sunny day. Half plus a half equals 1.
Edit
Now,
box.
second
End of
part.
document. New line.
If you want to create graphs, we can now go into our key graph or key maths application. Now, key maths is an application that allows you to do calculations, and then also it allows you to create graphs in real time. And that shortcut is backspace and M. So backspace with M
Key math expression.
will
UEV
open
edit
up
box.
my
math.
key math expressions, and I can now start to type various different equations. So let's do 2x
Dots 2 3
plus
dots
3y equals
dots 3
5, and hit enter.
Key math.
Okay, so I'm going to go
Visual
open
Braille
up my
output
visual
on.
display. So visually, the print side of things, those that are visual, that can see my screen, I have 3 different sections. I have my Braille sections. I then have a print of the formula, and I then have on the right side of the display the graph that it's appearing. But for the Braille user at this moment in time, all that I have is a list of all my equations. And because I'm in a list, remember, I've got my focus indicator there showing me where the focus is. So if I want to make some changes, I can hit enter on this formula and make the necessary change. If I want to see the graph, so if I want to find out, okay, I can see this as graph, there is a shortcut for that as well. But I want to explain these other little additional Braille that you see maybe just before the equation. So on my top line, I've got a letter G and an E, and then it gives me my equation. Now, GE means it's graph enabled. Okay, it means whatever this equation is here, okay, it's created a graph. Okay, as likewise down the bottom here, G and E, it's created a graph. If you want to hide things, so maybe you don't want to see that particular line, okay, you can hide that, but I'll come to that in just a moment. So I now know that whatever I've created here, it's graphable. So I want to go and have a look at that. The shortcut for that is enter G, but again, you can open up your context menu.
Key math.
Now I can create, what it's done, it's created a kind of a snapshot of the graph. So as I move around using my minus keys, my plus keys, I can use my panning keys as well to move around. And as I feel this, I'm now seeing my X and Y axis into play. I'm now seeing kind of a multiple lines here that are in my equation. So I'm feeling what is the parabola, kind of more curved. And I also see that there is a kind of a diagonal line that's coming between my X and going across my Y axis as well. Now, what we can do here is, let's say a question that maybe the teacher wants to ask me is, where do the lines intersect on the Y-axis or the X-axis, right? So here we can check where that is. We can point. We can then use my double click, and what will happen is
0.100, 1.7.
it will give me the audio and the Braille feedback at the very top of my X and Y position. So with this graphic, I can now interact and find the certain positions when asked to do so. So again, let's find it on this bit down the bottom here. I'm going to point and click, and it will give
1.4,
me
0.037.
So I'm 1.4, where that kind of line starts to intersect on my Y-axis. But there's too many lines here. So let's say you've got multiple lines. It can get very confusing. And we use Desmos. Desmos is the integrated graphing tool. And in Desmos, those that are sighted amongst you, you'll notice that every line or equation is different color. So how can we show that for a tactile user? Well, what we can do is we can hide the equation. So I'm going to go to this equation here that I'm on, my 2x1, and I want to hide that by pressing my backspace or .7 and 1, 2, 3. And that's now hidden it. And it's now converted my GE to NG, meaning not graphing. Now, when I view my graph, I'm now just seeing the parabola graph. So there's a way that you can remove and find out which graph or which line is equivalent to that equation. Now, what I really do love about the possibilities and what we've created here is the spontaneity, which isn't really available in the classroom today. And what I mean by that is, well, okay, what if I want to change some equations? What will happen to my graph? Today, in the real-time world, if a student asks a teacher, they may explain that. They may quickly get the wiki sticks to try and help. They may not have the time. But again, it's not really the case of where that student or user is trying to find out for themselves. So I'm going to do that. Okay, I want to find out, well, what will happen if I change this value to
edit box.
Maybe minus
.6. .6 deleted.
So as I go down, let me
.3.3.6.
do a minus sign. Okay, so now that I've done that, I want to view my graph. And within 5 or so seconds, I've now noticed that I'm changing it to a negative, for example. It's now on my negative part of my graph. So these are some basic things that are missing in today's classroom. And now this is now possible thanks to the Monarch, where you can instantly, on your own, find out what will happen in real time to those graphs. Then lastly, to finish off, we can then copy this and we can then paste it into my
expressions that are hidden. No button. Yes.
We want to copy that over and I want to paste it in
edit box. End of
in my document.
Please wait. Move to clipboard. Space.
So as I've pasted it into my document now, I'm going to do a print preview. So if I was to send this to the teacher, I will also have the printed graph and the Braille equation there. So really, again, really inclusive. For those that are not predominant with Braille, you can now create all of your stuff in Braille in your own language and then send that to a sighted peer.
Main menu. Braille editor.
So we talked about maths. We talked about the word processor supporting MathML. I know I've got a short amount of time, and I really wanted to show you one last thing, which is the Victor Reader. Now in Victor Reader, we support eBraille and we support EPUB, we support Word documents. So it's multiple files that we support in Victor Reader. It is a library. So we are connected to all of the online libraries, traditionally DAISY, and also there are some libraries that support Braille. This is an EPUB book. So if you're traditionally using EPUB books and you create a graphic inside your EPUB book, what we're doing here is as I'm reading, I come across any particular
Here is the line drawing of the Arc de Triomphe
graphic. It gives me a link. And with that link, I can now point and click, and that will then open up that graphic. It says, let me double check. Let's open up this one here. This one's the Eiffel Tower. So this is a JPEG, and the JPEGs, I can actually zoom in and zoom in and zoom in infinity. So I can zoom in to get more details here of this particular tactile graphic. So as I'm zooming in on the Eiffel Tower, I'm seeing where the restaurant is. I can move down, I can move up. And then once I'm finished with that tactile graphic, I can just exit out, continue reading the story.
Drawing of Eiffel Tower.
And then whenever there's another graphic, I can double click on it, and it will open up that graphic. And this is exactly how the eBraille is working with those 3 pillars that I mentioned. You'll find the spatial spatial formatting. You can quickly navigate by chapters, by pages, and of course, it integrates all of your tactile graphics on the one device, on the one file. I'm going to stop there. You've got a minute of questions. If anyone wants to ask me questions, please feel free to ask me a question.
Thank you very much for attending. If you have any further questions about the company, please contact HumanWare directly. You can reach the company by email at eu.sales@humanware.com.